Playing Minecraft like a pro starts with beginning your new survival worlds correctly, so here are 20 things you should do when starting any Minecraft world. Now the first one, which might seem useless but becomes much more important later on, is to try and collect saplings of every single type. There are a lot of wood types in Minecraft, especially in 1.20 we now of course have the bamboo and cherry tree wood types. But gaining a sampling from every type of sapling can still not be overlooked at how important it is. The reason why is that as you're exploring around Minecraft, you're never going to have every single tree type right next to you. So for example right here, with just a couple saplings, we can turn those into large plants of every single one of these tree types, giving us access to not only a really great house in Minecraft with all these different items, but also once you've found a certain wood type, you don't have to worry about going around trying to find those saplings again. And this is a great way of starting your world correctly because it's giving you access to all these different blocks, which are going to help you a lot with your world. The next thing I would suggest every player does when starting a new Minecraft world is to go around trying to find a village. And once you have found a village, to actually purposely trap 2 of those villagers. You might be wondering what's the point of doing that? Well, the reason is pretty simple. Oftentimes it's difficult to go to sleep every single night that you're playing in a Minecraft world, and so because of that, it's actually really simple for there to be a situation in which zombies spawn and kill literally every single villager in the entire village. But the trick is to go through the village and protect 2 villagers. Doesn't really matter what types of villagers they are, they could even be nitwits or baby villagers or any profession. The idea here is having 2 villagers so that eventually long term you can have 2 villagers that you can repopulate the entire village with. As I've seen far too many abandoned villages in Minecraft that became that way because players not properly protect at least 2 villagers there. Now, as well as scouting out villages and getting the treasure from them, it's also important to look for other structures and try and get the loot from those. So things like desert temples, jungle temples, shipwrecks, ruined portals, and any other structure you might find around the overworld, there's going to be a good chance of there being decent loot inside of them. As for example, inside the desert temple, although there is the risk of getting exploded by TNT, we also have the advantage of things like golden apples, tons of mob loot, enchanted books, like let's say right here we have Fortune 3 and Smite 4. And although we didn't get it in this chest, things as rare as diamonds can be found inside of these. Now of course, all depending on what biome you're in or nearby, finding these structures is actually quite easy, and the treasure inside of them is really worthwhile with things like gold and diamonds and all kinds of other loot. Another thing that is super important to do and not overlook early game is to get wheat and sugarcane farms started, ideally on the first day. Now the reason for this is that with both these items, there's sort of an exponential curve of how many of them you get. What that basically means is that when you're first trying to farm out sugarcane and wheat, for the first few days in your world, you're not going to have very many of them at all, with of course there being very sparse amounts of sugarcane naturally generating across the Minecraft world, and things like wheat seeds only being obtainable from breaking different grasses. And so because of that, the earlier you start your farms, the earlier you're going to be at the point where you have far too much wheat and far too much sugarcane, and so by starting those on the first day, we're going to kind of avoid the issue of getting to a point where you're running out of food. I found that this is something that a lot of players do forget, and then they've gone diamond mining, they come back to the surface to make themselves an enchanting table, but realize that even if they have the enchanting table and a ton of diamonds, they have no food source, and they also have no paper source to get those enchanted books. I think it's vitally important early on in a Minecraft world to go caving. A lot of players will wait a little bit to get themselves some starting resources, but I think it's really important to not wait and to really do this as soon as possible. The reason why, especially in Java Edition, is because of this effect called local difficulty. What it basically means is that the longer you're in an area for, the more difficult it'll become in terms of more mob spawns and just everything, like for example mobs having armor on. And so because of this, although of course there will be some mobs inside of caves when you're first starting out, the number and important things about them, like for example if they can wear armor or not, or if they can pick up items, are going to be at much more manageable levels at this point than it would be if you waited a few days. And so for example, we can go down through this cave where we just have a couple zombies to deal with and a spider, harvest our important resources like our first iron out of here, that make that initial leap into the cave much easier. Now here's a tip that's best if you've just spawned into a world, but really at any stage it's important. And basically what it is to mark out the spawn point. And so we know that we've just spawned here. what we're going to do is simply build a small tower of dirt here so that we're aware of what the exact spawn point is. You might be assuming that this is 0, 0, and you can see on this seed it actually is 0, 0, but that is not always the case because certain biomes the player is not allowed to spawn in, or for example the game wouldn't want to spawn you in the very middle of the ocean, and so because of that, by marking down what the spawn point is, or even just remembering that on this world it is 0, 0, it'll make things easier in the future. Not only is it easier if you have a multiplayer world to do this, so that you know where your players are going to show up when they spawn in the world, but as well as that fact, you can then also build a cool spawn point hub and have it be perfectly centered, and as you can see here, we did appear directly on this dirt column because that is the exact spawn point. It's always fun when you first start out in a world to go running around the biome that you're in, killing mobs to get yourself your initial food sources, but the one thing that I would say is important to be careful of is if you are right next to where you want to build a base, be sure to leave 2 mobs of each type. So for example, we now know that we have 2 cows over there, so we can go on an absolute rampage, getting every other cow in the entire area. The reason why is that there's not really much of a point for there to be random cows up here, and it doesn't help us that much, but what will help us is to get ourselves some quick and easy beef and leather, however without risking us not being able to get ourselves a cow population again. Now the problem is if you don't save 2 mobs of each type is it'll lead to issues where you have to take these mobs from further away and bring them back. But the nice thing is once you have 2 mobs anywhere saved inside of a mob farm, then this really isn't important at all. One big problem that's important to overcome when first starting out a Minecraft world is a small amount of coal or just fuel in general, as of course it's pretty common to not get that much coal. For example, they're just 4 pieces. So here's a good tip to not have to worry about running out of this precious material. Make yourself a crafting table and then from that make yourself some sticks, and using just 1 piece of coal, 3 sticks and 3 logs, we can make a campfire. Now the campfire is going to save us a ton of coal long term. Why, you may be asking? Well, it's pretty simple. We can cook 4 items at a time on a campfire, and a piece of coal in a furnace will smelt 8 items, which means that if we cook items on the campfire 2 times, we're getting all the uses out of that coal that we would before. But the campfire is infinite, it'll keep cooking those items forever, and so what makes that so awesome is the fact that we now have an infinite method of cooking our food. One of the most important and overlooked things to keep aware of when you're first starting out a Minecraft world is your own safety. This is one of the big reasons why a lot of times people will die multiple times when starting a new Minecraft world. It's because, of course, it's very hard to keep yourself safe when you don't really have any armor or any supplies. Here, though, are 2 items that you should craft as soon as possible to get yourself that bit of extra safety. The first one is the shield. This is most important, only costs 1 iron and 6 planks, so should really be able to be made on the first day. And the second thing is with iron ingots, you can make yourself a bucket. Both of these become life-saving tools. Of course, with the water bucket, it's for MLG jumps to make yourself not die of fall damage. This can be used in even very steep inclines to make sure that you don't die of fall damage. Well, this item is beyond overpowered. I mean, you can completely survive creeper blasts. You can even just hold it up and let zombies slam against your shield and not take any damage at all from that. The sword and the fishing rod, these are 2 tools to get yourself a ton of fish in Minecraft. Of course, you can use the standard fishing rod if you want, just waiting for a fish to come and eventually catching it. This is not a bad method, but it is fairly slow. If you're actually next to a river and you see a big school of fish, something I would recommend is taking out your sword. Just go around fish to fish, hitting them all. The nice thing about fish in Minecraft is that they have a very small amount of HP, and so because of this, it is super simple and easy to go around killing them and getting yourself a ton of the actual fish items, much quicker than manual fishing. And if you're harvesting these fish efficiently, then you can get yourself up to a stack of salmon or cod in just a couple minutes. Something I'll actually do all the time when first starting out a Minecraft world is make sure I don't have to worry about food, and a good trick to do this is to just head to a river or to an ocean and simply slap on the head about 64 fish. Now when you're exploring around the vast wilderness of a Minecraft world, there's of course certain things to look out for, like desert temples or other structures. But another thing that you do find very commonly and you should not overlook is a lava lake. If you find a lava lake, this is your ticket to speed up the process of going to the Nether. All you're going to need is a water bucket, and it is made easier if you have a second bucket as well. Now, there's lots of methods to do this, but probably the simplest one is just to take lava and to put it into a little form like this. We're basically going to be casting another portal here, and then just place some blocks that we have areas to put more lava into. But either way, the idea behind this is before we find diamonds, we're going to have have the ability to go to the Nether. Now the one thing to be super careful with when doing this method is that you're really not allowed to make any mistakes. As you can see right here, for example, we can do the top 2 blocks, but again, just be aware to not make any mistakes, and you can now see we have that entire Nether portal made. Speaking of the Nether, let's take a look at some really important tips and tricks when you're first starting the game to make sure your Nether journey is successful. The first thing is, as soon as you've gone through that Nether portal, you want to turn on your F3 screen or your coordinates screen and write down your coordinates. Don't just put them in chat, actually put them on a piece of paper or on a document. So for instance, right here, our portal is at -288.76 and -296. Even in Minecraft worlds where I have the exact coordinates of a portal memorized, it is still incredibly difficult to find your portal sometimes, and that's just due to the large cave-like nature of the Nether. But as well as that, 2 other important steps is to bring some building blocks as well as flint and steel. Now you want to cover up one of the sides of your Nether portal, and on the other side ideally to make yourself a small structure. This is not completely necessary, but it is an important step if you feel like there's a lot of ghasts that are going to spawn around. Now another really important step when starting a new Minecraft world is to make a starter base. This can look like anything you want it to. You could make sort of a pastel desert base like this. It could be much larger than this or much smaller, much simpler or much more complex. It's whatever you want. But ideally there's some certain basics you want. The first thing is that it can reasonably protect you from mobs. You also want to have a bed inside of it so you can set your spawn point and skip the night. An area for enchanting is a good idea, and also an area for brewing when you unlock that. Also, I would really suggest getting yourself a smelting area in part of it, and having a massive amount of chests to give yourself good storage space, as one of the most important things about a base is turning sort of the nomadic first couple days lifestyle into more of a permanent area to do things in. Exploring the Nether can be incredibly dangerous, but something really important I would suggest you do is, if there are no piglins nearby, to go around mining some of the gold ore here. Now you may have gold already by the time you're in the Nether, but whatever you do, you want to have a good supply of gold on you. Now wearing gold armor is always a good idea to not have aggressive piglins on your hands, but whatever you end up doing in terms of pacifying the piglins, the idea here is to get a piglin bartering station going. The reason why is that if you utilize this correctly, you can make yourself much safer inside the Nether. Now you might be wondering, how in the world does piglin bartering make you safer? But I'll tell you why. It's because of this trade giving you splash potions and standard potions of fire resistance. Basically, when you're going through the Nether, there's oftentimes a lot of danger from fire, from either literal fire or lava. And so if you think you're about to fall into lava, or you are literally starting to fall into lava, you can throw that potion once you're there, giving yourself the effect, and you will survive in the lava. The Soul Sand Valley is one of the best, if not the best biome in the entire Nether, and probably one of the best resource biomes in the entire game. The reason why is that we can use the Soul Sand Valley for a massive source of bone meal, and it's all about making that early game Minecraft be easy, so we can go through this biome harvesting all kinds of these bone blocks. And you do want to be careful because there's also bones that are alive in this biome, of course in the form of skeletons. But if we can just go through here harvesting what's probably these skeletons' big brothers, then we can get ourselves enough bone meal to speed up our crop growth and even our tree farming. As for example, we could help out this lily farmer villager by going through here and speed growing all of its crops, turning 1 potato into 5 potatoes, turning 5 potatoes into 8, so on and so forth, getting ourselves a massive amount of crops, and doing this while completely removing the wait time that's usually involved. Pumpkins and melons are really important things to grow as some of your first crops. As soon as you get some pumpkin seeds or some melon seeds, I would highly recommend planting these down and getting yourself a massive amount of these valuable crops. Now the best way of planting pumpkins and melons is pretty simple. All you want to do is put them in rows. Now technically, they are most efficiently grown if they're put in a checkerboard shape, but early game without a Silk Touch axe, it's pretty difficult to not just break all the farmland this way, and then we'll simply just let those grow. And the great thing about pumpkins and melons is that once they have fully grown, they regrow those pumpkins and those melons very quickly. Now not generally this quickly, but they still do grow quite fast. It's all down to this villager right here, the farmer. Almost every farmer has pumpkin for emerald and melon for emerald trades, and so by getting yourself a pumpkin and melon farm, you're getting yourself a good source of emeralds early on. Speaking of villagers, something really important to do early game is to use villagers to your advantage to level up really quickly. I'll give you an example. Let's say the Fletcher villager. If we get ourselves a Fletcher, sometimes as one of the initial trades, we have 1 emerald for 16 arrows. No matter how hard it is to get an emerald, this is absolutely the best way way of getting arrows in the entire game. With even just a couple pumpkin and melon for emerald trades, we can get ourselves tons and tons of arrows without the need for complicated setups. And of course with villagers like the librarian, the mending book is just a couple steps away. Now obviously if we're doing this early game, we can't really make a proper system for all this, so it's important to use villagers whose initial and starting trades are really good. Some ones like the toolsmith, their first 2 trades aren't perfect, but after that we do have some decent trades that are unlocked. Buried treasure is common in Minecraft, and shipwrecks are even more common, so raiding these early game is really vital to getting yourself a head start, with various different types of loot from let's say the food chest to the paper chest, and there even being the incredibly valuable treasure chest, which can get you things as expensive as diamonds and bottles of enchanting. We also of course have the buried treasure map, which is just as important if not better than the other treasure that you find, because there's the heart of the sea in here, food, gold, iron, and usually diamonds. And early on, even as quick as your first couple days, you can go shipwreck raiding and buried treasure finding, which is a great way of getting yourself your first few diamonds, and also some useful bonuses of iron, gold, and other materials. Like for instance starting crops of food if you're not next to a village. Now it's not especially difficult to get yourself your first enchantment table, but what can be difficult is getting the books for it, and what a lot of players will do is they'll have their enchanting table, they'll have some lapis, and they'll even have some diamond tools, but they won't bother enchanting it. However, here's why I would suggest enchanting your tools and your armor even if you don't have a great enchanting setup. It's because certain enchantments are much better than you would assume, but the reason why it's important to enchant things early on is to try and get the unbreaking enchantment. Obviously in efficiency, 1 diamond pickaxe isn't going to do much. What is going to do a lot is having unbreaking on your tools. The reason why is that oftentimes it's difficult to get a lot of diamond armor, and tools early on. However, just something as simple as unbreaking 1 will double your tool's durability, having unbreaking 2 will triple it, and having unbreaking 3 will make it 4 times larger. That's right, that means that by basically spending 3 lapis, we're turning our 1 diamond sword into the durability of 2 diamond swords. If you're exploring around and you happen to find a pillager outpost and you think, oh, there's nothing really worthwhile there, think again. In this structure as well as in the woodland mansion, we of course have the Allays. You might not think of Allays as being that worthwhile, but I'm going to tell you why, especially early game, these little creatures are going to be so useful. You want to start by giving one of them a stick and one of them a sapling. Depending on what type of trees you're farming depends on the type of saplings you should give them. Then go around the forest chopping down trees, and basically the thing that I generally tend to do when chopping down trees in Minecraft is kind of wait around after I've chopped some to make sure I don't waste the sticks and all the other saplings that'll drop. But in reality the Allays can do all that for you. As for an example right here, if I drop down a bunch of sticks and a bunch of saplings on the ground, let's take a little look behind us and see what's happening. All these items that fall into the ground, we're going to have them thrown to us by the Allays, which means these mobs are going to pick up for us all those item drops. Anyway, that is 20 things to do when starting a new Minecraft world. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to press the like button, subscribe to see more content like this with notifications on so that you never miss an upload in the future. I will see you in the next video, and have a good day. Goodbye!